Welcome to the Matchmaker podcast, where we talk all about love, dating, and relationships. And we hope that we can provide some insight and a little golden nugget of wisdom for you to walk away with something to help yourself or to help somebody in your life. And today I have a special privilege and honor of being here with Rabbi Leo and Aliza. And we are going to talk about going from grief to joy, which I don't think is a subject that we discuss much in dating and relationships, although especially in the last couple of years, it's been something that we, the Jewish people, have had to deal with more closely. And I want you to give us a little bit of background so that we can hear a little bit about your story, where you came from, and then we're going to go literally from grief to joy. This is also going to be that time period from Tisha B'Av through Tu B'Av, which is kind of mirroring your story. So, Rabbi Leo, will you kick us off and
Sure, thank you, Alisa. I guess my most recent story starts on the 7th of April, 2023, just over 2 years ago. We took off, was married to Lucy, had 5 children, 4 girls and a boy. We went on a Passover holiday, on a Friday morning 2 years ago. We set off in 2 cars. I was with my son Yehuda and my daughter Tali. Lucy was driving with Maya, who was 20, and Rena, who was 15. My 5th child, Karen, was in Jerusalem for Shabbat because she was doing her national service there. Waze took us from Efrat, where we lived, to Tiberias, up the 90 highway in the Jordan Valley. He wanted us to take a left halfway at the Hamra junction. I changed ways to continue straight because it's an easier journey. Lucy didn't do that, and she took a left, and they were intercepted by 2 Hamas terrorists, and we buried my 2 daughters on the Sunday and my wife on the Tuesday.
Intense moments that came before October 7th, where we, the Jewish people, never really are out of danger. We only have this illusion that we are. Very, very intense. Thank you for sharing. You wrote an article that was called From Grief to Joy. It just came out recently. And you shared a bit of this journey, and then it led you into this moment of an in-between state where you had a family, a life, and a whole trajectory that was heading in one direction on one road. And then it shifted, not due to your will, but due to divine intervention. Tell me a little bit about that transition and bring Alisa into this story.
Okay, so clearly after the tragedy, life was very tough. We had to get to grips with what had happened. We had a shiva with over 10,000 people attending. Baruch Hashem, the whole Jewish people gave us a massive hug. And I think that cannot be underestimated, the impact of that on us. And it really lifted us up. And what happened afterwards was really a testament to my neighbors in Efrat. They looked after me and my kids. They insisted on cooking for us and cleaning for us, on visiting us. And they appointed for me a secretary during the Shiva. And she took appointments for people who wanted to meet with me after the Shiva. And I was busy for about 6 weeks intensively meeting people who wanted to speak to me, journalists or just people who wanted to do projects in memory of the girls. And because of that, I was very busy. And busy in a positive way, creating projects and working on projects in memory of the girls. And it switched me into a sort of forward-looking mode and took me away from the sort of retrospective, what-if type of thinking. And I think that's really one of the things that really helped me most in that time after the.
That's incredible. Incredible to have such an intuitive community that knew how to love and nurture you back to health. Like you described it as a big hug from the Jewish people, but it sounds like a really intense hug from your specific community.
There are many strange things that happened at the time, but if I go back to 2008, we were leaving Israel. We'd studied for 4 years in Israel. I was trained to be a rabbi, and we were leaving to go to Shlichut, to go and work in England for 6 years as a rabbinical couple. I was on an interview in Charleston, South Carolina, looking for a job there, and in the end I ended up in London. But while I was away, there was a terror attack at Merkaz Arav Yeshiva. And one of the boys who was tragically killed was a 16-year-old boy called Abraham Moses. And happened to be that Lucy was very friendly with his mother at the time. And while I was away for the week, she spent the whole week in the shiva in a frat. And I think she was completely startled by the incredible hug of the community and the tremendous support. That meant that when we went on shlichut, when we were in England for 6 years, initially it wasn't meant to be shlichut, it was meant to be forever. After about less than a year, she said to me one morning, we have to go back to a frat. There is no other place that we can possibly live. And I think one of the things that really impacted her was that experience of the shiva that she'd attended while I'd been away. And little did she know, or did I know, that that kindness was exactly what I was going to save me when we went through a similar experience many years later.
Wow, what an incredible story, and how powerful it is that we have this mourning process, and there's a whole year of mourning. We have a week of Shiva where we really intensely experience it, but yours was extended to this extended additional 6-week period that really gave you the rest of the chizuk, I think, to continue on so that you could be as complete and whole as you needed to be to function within the world. So you get this massive hug from your community. You're kind of nurtured to a place of groundedness, I assume, as much as you could be in that circumstance. And you're now doing your life. You have your other children, you have Shabbat, you have your work. How does it go from that to, okay, it's time, I got to start again?
So I was very busy and very motivated to get out and to speak about the story. I felt that it was very important, particularly for the non-Jewish world, to hear about our story, because there's a lot of negative press about Israelis, and that was before October the 7th. It's got even worse. And I felt that as an English Israeli, I had the ability to communicate to the wider audience and explain to them what we've been through and how there is evil in the world, there is good in the world, and actually they should be embracing good and fighting evil, which I think is a message which has become even more important over the last year and a half of the war. So I was very engaged in that, and I was blessed that my 3 children, were with me for every Shabbat for the first year of mourning. And then after about a year, there was a Shabbat where all 3 of them happened to be away. One daughter is in the Air Force, one daughter was in seminary, and my son is in yeshiva. And they all happened to have a Shabbat away from home, and I was by myself. And I invited myself to friends for Friday night dinner and for Shabbat lunch. But when it came to the third meal, Suda Shlishit, I decided intentionally to be by myself, and I returned home that afternoon to an empty house. And I burst into tears, and I cried for half an hour. While I was crying, I was thinking to myself, why are you crying? And it might seem obvious because, I came home to an empty house, and that's obviously going to awaken all those sort of thoughts. But bearing in mind that I'd been home every day for a year to an empty house, and this hadn't happened regularly, I thought, what is it that's sparking me at this point? And I realized that it was because this was the first Shabbat in 30 years I was by myself. And I realized it was not going to be the last, because my kids now are spending more and more time out the house, thank God. And I suddenly thought to myself, what can I do about it? And I answered myself, you have to get remarried. And the tears immediately went away, and I felt calm because I understood why I was feeling this pain. And I feel that generally in life, that's a message that when we have pain, it comes for a reason. It's a blessing, because actually, if we understand what's driving the pain, we can generally change our lives and get rid of that pain. And that's really what the pain is there to do. So that was the moment I decided I needed to start dating. And then I would like to say I approached a load of shadchanim, but actually they approached me.
Just being in the industry, we hear stories all the time, and we hear a lot of course, tragedies and things that have gone on. While everybody else is in the moment of mourning, in the moment of a shadchan's mind, it's like, when is that person going to be ready to be set up? Right. And we know that there's life after life, and that there's a new life awaiting somebody. I had a friend, it was my husband's best friend, and he was in the process of getting a divorce, and my best friend looked like this could be a really nice match. And I'm like, not yet. He's not available. This is not the moment. And they did end up meeting after he was divorced, and it ended up being the right moment. But before that moment, it's literally the doors are closed, the gates are locked, and you can't get in. So it's beautiful to hear that you had that moment of like the aha moment and a moment of inspiration, like this won't be my last Shabbat alone. My kids are growing up. Please God, they're going to live their lives, do their things, and what am I going to do? I need to get remarried. You had an aha moment. Okay, let's put your story on pause for a minute, and I'm going to invite Aliza to share a little bit about your dating journey, whatever you're comfortable to share, so that we know a little bit of your background and then how you ended up being able to date.
Sure. So I moved to Israel almost 20 years ago by myself. I had previously lived in Toronto. That's where I grew up. Dated a little bit there. Then I moved to New York because I had to toughen up before I came to Israel. Dated a little bit there. And everyone I dated, my one caveat was you have to want to move to Israel eventually. I said eventually, and everyone said, yeah. But then when we started talking about real things, that eventually went up to 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. And then it just made sense for me to move. So I moved by myself. And then after taking some time to organize myself here in Israel, I started dating again. And it's been a journey, as you say. I've been dating now for 25 years. Lots of crazy stories, some good, some bad, some awful. But for me, and if you ask any of my friends, my answer to dating was always yes. Any shadchan who called me...
You were open. So if they said, always. Would you like to go out? You said yes. Did you need info? Did you get photos,
Very
data?
little. I do not Google. I do not FaceTime.
Yeah.
I do not social media. I do not follow him. So that's too big a commitment. No, I don't believe in that. I think if you want to tell me something, you'll tell me something when it's time. And so my answer to my shadchanim, my answer to all the dating apps was yes, I'll try it.
Right, okay, so I talk about different types of daters. There's the very fussy ones that basically say no almost all the time and very few yeses. There's a lot of people that say maybe, I don't know, and they have to do data and research and stuff. And there's the yes people that are just very open. You know, would you like to go out? Yes. Would you like to give it a try? Yes. And did that wear you down?
Yes.
Or Okay, because
yes.
That's the other challenge is balancing.
It was extremely painful. I would cry often after most dates, I would say. And most of these dates, I did all the work. I was never asked a single question. I never felt that they were interested. They were happy to go on a second, third, fourth date because I was an excellent interviewer. I got really good at it over 25 years. But the dating process was never fun for me. It never felt like we were connecting. It wasn't fun.
So it was just a series of 1 or 2 or 3 and done type dates and nothing, like not a deep connection, nothing right. Emotionally connected.
I had relationships, yes. But I would say the dating process, and especially as apps started coming out, because I dated from no apps to apps. And especially when apps came out, it became even harder. It was just another form of rejection. And it felt like a game as opposed to anyone really finding something authentic to connect about.
So just to validate you, it really is a game. And they do this thing where, you know, by swiping, it gives you the dopamine hit and it's more exciting than a first date. You know, you could go on a first date, but what's even more exciting than that, even if you swipe yes or no, doesn't even matter which way you swipe. As long as you're swiping, it's like a video game where you're like, ooh, 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 you get points, right? And your brain downloads this as some hit of emotion that gets you through it, but it's overwhelming after years and years of doing that. So you're open, you say yes all the time. Do you get any data and information about him? Do you hear anything, or do you just say yes because somebody wants to set you up?
So in this case, I was actually coming off of a very difficult relationship and I was feeling very depleted. And my shadchanit called me, and we'd been working together for about 5-6 years, and I really trusted her. She always had my back. She pushed me, but always had my back. And she sent me his picture first. She sent me a voice note and said, "Are you available today?" I said, "Today I'm available." So that's how she always did it. Today. So today I'm available. She said, "Okay, great. I need you to take a deep breath. I need you to look at what I'm sending you and don't respond right away."
So she sends you.
So she sent me the picture first, and then the profile. And I saw the picture and I said, "No way, just no way. What are you thinking?" And then I read the profile, which was the opposite of me. Everything that he wanted on the profile was exactly the opposite of me. He wanted a widower or a divorcee, someone with kids, a certain age bracket. Like, it was just really not me. And I said to her, "I don't know what you're thinking. I like, have you read the profile?" Like, I know he's...
Did you listen to what he said he wanted?
Because you know how this goes. It's like man, woman, yalla, let's go.
Right.
And I was too depleted to feel like I could carry anything more if it wasn't going to be real.
Right.
And I said, and she said, "But he's a good person." I said, I'm not doubting he's a good person, but he doesn't want me. So what's the point of this game?
Right. Did she have a good answer?
She said, "It's just a phone call."
She's very good. You'll tell me later who this is. Good. I like this. She had something in mind and she saw something bigger there, or maybe it's just a matchmaker's intuition. I don't know.
She said, "I would never send you someone that I don't think you can handle, and I would never send you something that I don't think you can handle. So why don't you just have a phone call?"
Okay. She gets this message. What's your dating story? You started dating after this Shabbat. You had an aha moment. You start dating.
I started dating, and I thought my first shadchan said to me, "What are you looking for?" So that was a very good question, because I was looking for a wife, but I hadn't.
How do you define that? Because you haven't been looking for all these years.
And for me, it was a challenge, because I'm a Baal Teshuva. I met Lucy at university, and I never went on a shidduch in my life.
Right.
So here I am at 53, doing my first shidduch. In fact, I actually had one shidduch about 4 months after the tragedy. A friend of mine said to me, "Meet this girl, she's very nice, blah, blah, blah." So I went out with her, wasn't suitable. I went back to my friend and I said, "Really sorry, it's not going to work out." And a week later, she called me and said, "So, no?" And I was in real shock, because I'd said to my friend, assuming that he would tell her, and I hadn't realized that that's how it works today. Today, somebody connects you, and then you have to tell them directly.
It should work that way. It should work that way. You're not wrong to assume that.
Okay.
That person just didn't bridge the gap. You're not wrong to assume that.
Anyway, since then, I was very clear with them very quickly. Anyway, so I started this process earnestly after this Shabbat. And the shadchan asked me, "What are you looking for?" So I thought, I've got 3 kids. Surely it's easier to have someone who hasn't got kids, and they would probably be more likely to come to live in a frat in my home. So I'm looking for someone who, is single, hasn't been married, hasn't got kids, probably an English speaker, and that was my spec. So they start sending me all these curricular CVs, and I went out with pretty much all of the ones that I thought were vaguely relevant, and one after the other. There were reasons why this wasn't going to work out. So after meeting 10, 15 of this type of spec, I said to myself, look, this is not what I'm looking for. And at the same time, there was actually a group for second marriages that I came across me, invited me to an event. And I turned up. I didn't understand exactly what it was, because the way they marketed it was a speaker, a psychologist talking about how to handle second marriage. So I thought, that sounds interesting. So I turn up. It's advertised 7 o'clock in someone's apartment in Modi'in. I turn up at 7 o'clock on the dot. And that's the first.
Nobody's there.
I'm the only person except for the host. I sit there for like an hour, like an idiot, with nothing to do. Then everyone turns up at 8 o'clock. And then the woman doesn't even come herself till 9 o'clock. So I feel like a complete idiot at this point. And actually, I get up very early in the morning, so I had to leave by 9:30. So the whole thing was a complete disaster. Any case, I went to this event a few times, and there were different speakers. There were some really inspiring speakers, and actually, I think it's an amazing thing for someone who hasn't been in this process. If you find a group like this where they have speakers, and it's a little bit less threatening, because you could be there just to hear the speaker and not just because of the.
But they give you an organic time to schmooze, to connect with
exactly.
whoever.
Once I realized what was going on.
You had to learn how to play the game.
And then I turned up an hour later, and I, it was enough. Any case, because of that, I guess I started dating divorcees, and I was interested in meeting some widows, but there weren't any widows at the time who I was introduced. I met some interesting divorcees, but it didn't work out for whatever reason. And Baruch Hashem. But at the time, I thought this was this was a better connection. And then I get this particular shadchanit who contacted me and said, "What about this?" and sent me Alisa's profile.
Now, this is the same one you're talking about.
It's an organization called Points of Contact. And so what they have is different representatives. And this lady has people that she's marketing, and the other one has someone that she's marketing, and they speak to each other and they make the match and they contact
the two
you.
matchmakers had a little schmooze and said, "We think this could work." Now, meantime, you were originally looking for more of your profile,
so
but then you changed.
I was dating Israeli, at this point I'm dating Israeli divorcees. Tzipi contacts me and says, "Look, what about Alisa?" And sends me her profile. And I said, "Look, to be honest, I've dated all the single girls, and they're not suitable. But there's always a reason why
they don't want me. It's not going to work.
There's always a reason why it's not working, and I just think it's a waste of time. I'm really looking for a divorcee or for a widow. That's what I'm looking for." So she said, "Well, let me speak to my contact." She spoke to her, and she said, "Look, give it a try, whatever." And I looked at my diary, and I'd just broken up with somebody. I'd been out on 2 or 3 dates. And I said, "I've got Wednesday evening free. What have I got to lose?" Okay.
She always says yes, and you decide to say yes. And you end up on a first date. New? How does the first date go? Is it out of the fairy tales and the rainbows and butterflies and
Not really.
Good, break the stereotype, please.
So I decided that this was such a long shot that I wasn't going to put a huge amount of effort in. Normally I take for a first date, I'll go to a nice restaurant, I'll plan a 1 hour, often a 2 hour dinner or something. We'll sit down somewhere comfortable and we'll chat, and it's very nice. I thought we'll go to a snack place and whatever, we'll just sit down and have something like a small snack. And Alisa, you can say.
So we had a first phone call, right?
Okay.
Because that's what you do.
Yeah.
First spoke on the phone, and if it went well on the phone, then we'd go on a first date. Yeah. On the phone call, he said, "Okay, you choose the place. I want a small snack." I'm a very, very literal person, so I chose, and I wanted something off the beaten path. I didn't want to sit on Emek Rafaim with him.
Right.
So I chose a small place that has literal tapas, small snacks. And he kept saying the whole day, like, these plates are so small. Like, what is it? Why do we pay there? I'm like, it's so strange. But that's what he said he wanted. I'll give the man what he wants.
Snack. I just
That's
picked
what
a
we
place
got.
with a small snack.
And I was nervous because I felt like I had to impress him because
Why?
I felt like I was coming from minus going into this date and it was going to be more of an interview and less of a date because the spec was so wrong, so not who I was. So I was already starting from a place that I had to prove myself, which is not ever a place that you want to start anything on, right? So I think we both kind of came from a place of like nothing to lose, but also probably this isn't going to be anything.
And that's sometimes where the magic happens because the guard is down and in a good way, we don't care because I don't really think that there's potential. I mean, if there is, so it'll work. But if not, we're just going for a small snack. You don't even get dinner. And there's not much here. I'm not what you're looking for. I know that, but I'll just show up with a smile on my face and we'll see where we
I'll
go
just
from
say
here.
one additional thing.
Yeah.
I'm a person who's very hopeful always. And even in my darkest times, even when I was going through terrible breakups or feeling very lonely or also alone for Shabbatot in a row, Corona was a very hard period for most singles, I always had hope. And even the day that I got his profile, even though part of me felt like this is not right, something in me felt that there was some real potential here. And I showed him this today in my office. That day, I got a fortune cookie that said that soon someone will come into your life who will love you very much. And I wrote the date on the back that day.
You wrote the date on the back of it.
Date on the back. And I got his profile an hour before that. And I said, there's something that feels different about this. I don't know what it is, and it might be nothing, and it might be one and done, but I'm going to go in with a little bit of hope.
And I'll tell you something that happened to me. Actually, it was a couple of weeks after we met. It was Yom HaZikaron in Israel. And I don't know if you remember, but there was very high winds, very, very high winds. During the Shiva, my neighbors put a massive poster of the girls up outside my house. And it stayed there for about 2 years. And on the day of Yom HaZikaron, because of the winds, it came off the wall for the first time in 2 years, which I took as a sign that, that they were saying to me, now is the time to stop mourning for us. But I pinned it back up again with like nylon tags. And the next morning I came down and I saw the top corner had turned over and just Lucy's face had been obscured by the sign. And I just took this as a very strong message that Lucy was sending me a message, now you need to move on.
Yeah. We hear a lot of stories like that when somebody has, loved and lost and we're hanging on, but we know that they're in a beautiful place. We know that they've completed their mission. We talk about getting out of this life. Nobody makes it out alive, but we want to make it out whole. We want to make it out complete. We want to have done our mission. And when you've done that, you end on the other side okay, but the rest of us over here are not usually doing okay, and we're not held together, which is why we do have this mourning cycle and process that goes through the Shiva, and then the first year. We lost my mom 9 years ago, or I say she birthed her neshama, she birthed her soul 9 years ago, and I think of it like that. I was like, you just had no more need for your body anymore, and it was just time to move on. So it sounds like that was a clear, like, I'm done, let me be, I'm good, you're good, life's good. Fine, you have a first phone call, you have a first date with just a little light nosh, and things go okay, well enough that there's no reason to say no to another date.
Yeah, I think they went well. I think for me, one of the most important qualities is authenticity. And I think that I saw, in Alisa, someone who was very direct, very open, telling me what she thought, and didn't seem to be hiding anything. And it was lovely. It was just very natural and unprepared and unscripted. And that was, for me, that was a very positive experience.
I want to hear your side because you have a smile.
For me, he asked the one question I hate the most.
Why are you still single? Is that the question? Yes, I knew it.
It's like the most painful question you could be asked.
Why are you still single? God said not today.
But he said it, he meant it in a nice way now, I know. But at the time, it felt like, I told you I came from minus. He's still judging me. This is one and done. Like, let's go, drink your coffee faster. And when I got to the car, I remember thinking, doubt I'll hear from him. Like, I'm sure he's not interested.
What was your answer? Do you remember? Did you have do you remember what her answer was?
She never found the person that she, she matched, and she wasn't prepared to compromise. And I think, what I saw in Alisa was someone who's very hopeful, very capable, very go-getting, very positive. And I could see that she's someone who enjoys life. She enjoys her career. She enjoys her friends. Something very appealing was that she was talking about her married friends and how she spends Shabbat with her married friends, and described all their kids to me and how she's she's grown up with these kids and some of them are teenagers already. And I thought to myself, this is amazing, because a single girl of this age could be very bitter about her friends who have made it, and could sort of just lock herself up and keep away from them. And that really wasn't the case. It was the opposite. I thought, wow, what an amazing person to be able to have that positivity and to really love the kids of her friends.
Amazing. So you think he's not going to call? You're like, this is it. We're good. See, he proved why I'm not for him, and now we're good. You leave the date. What happens next?
He was very, very patient. He texted me early the next morning, and I was very surprised. And I obviously said yes, because he was very interesting. It was like a very easy conversation. It was a very easy date. And honestly, he was the first person ever in 25 years to ask me questions, to seem interested, to want to get to know me. It was a really lovely date. I just assumed from the last few questions that he's really just not interested in me.
The other thing that was appealing was I've been out with many of these other, maybe 30 different shidduchim over the year. And mostly the conversation was about trauma, particularly with the divorcees, because they'd suffered trauma of divorce. And also a number of them were social workers or in caring professions. So I met Alisa, and she doesn't follow social media. She wasn't following me. She didn't know anything much more about me than the average person. And it was a relief to be able to just sit there and talk about normal topics. And it brought me back to who I really am. Because even though to many people I'm this person who's dealt with trauma, in my mind I'm much more diverse. Alisa was able to tap into that. And I think her lack of preparation was very commendable. And strange enough, I'm also somebody who I spent my life working in jobs where I have to interview people or meet people. And on principle, I try not to find out too much about them before I meet them, the bare minimum. And when I dated also, I literally scanned a sort of picture to see whether I was vaguely attracted, and rough details about them, but literally 3 or 4 facts was enough. I'm not interested in anything that they wrote in a 2-page essay, because I figured that people are more complex than that. I think, if you like the way they look, and if, they're vaguely in the right life stage, then you have to meet them, because frankly, it could be the one.
So you meet again. Are there any sparks or anything at this point? I mean, you're curious about her, that's for sure. There's some interest there and curiosity. And you were thinking,
I'm interested. You're interested, but I couldn't pinpoint why, and I couldn't pinpoint what it was. And I kept saying to my friends, I'm not ready to end this, but I don't know why. I don't know why, because we're in such different stages of life. How could this possibly work? But something about it just feels right. And to be very honest, I read your book years ago, and I really loved it. When you say date till you hate, and all of
you hate them.
that was kind of like, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. I have to see this through.
Well, and he's the one who's asked the most questions and been the most interesting thus far.
Correct. And so I think I was acting from my only hesitation was fear. And so once I realized that, then I could put the fear aside and try to focus on the being present.
So when was there a shift for you? When was there was interest and curiosity, but not believing that it was going to be mutual, and not knowing the potential that was there? When did that shift?
So there were a few things. One, he asked me out. We went out a lot pretty quickly, and after our fourth date, which was it was a concert. It was public, very overwhelming for me. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, I'm done.
Overwhelming because a lot of people knew him and recognized him and were coming up to him.
And then he sent me a message early in the morning, saying, I'm interested, but it feels like I'm not sure if you are, which opened up a conversation about, are we in different places? Is this too much?
Right.
What do we want to do?
He, public eye, went from family life, doing his own thing, nobody really knows him, to if you walk around Israel, people are going to know who you are. I knew your story. I had heard of you. I did have the thought, like, when he's ready, I'll have to find out who knows him. Obviously, I didn't get to it before your matchmaker did. I'm glad that she
Thank
did.
you.
But I knew of your story. I knew who you were. And I don't know if I would have seen you, would I have known? But I get it that people recognize you on the street. And you are Miss No Social Media, not engaged with the whole world, just involved in life, living life, doing things. And all of a sudden you're at a concert and mass amounts of people are swarming you. And there's something going on, which is really intense. Yeah. Okay. So now he's like, okay, no. And you are...
And I said, okay, yalla, let's see where this goes.
And my strategy was...
I love it. He had a strategy.
My strategy was, this looks very promising, but I need to go out with her very, very often because...
Define very often.
I'm happy to go out almost every night. Because,
and you did?
Yeah, because if it's once a week, then I can make conversation with anyone once a week, and it can be fun and interesting because everybody has something to talk about once a week. But once you meet somebody every day, that's when you start running out of things to say.
Let's see when we'll run out of things to say.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, you're going to get married, you're going to be with this person every day. So you better find out what it's like being with them every day already.
Okay. I just want to shout out to the listeners. That's an intense way of dating. I think it's great for second time around couples or somebody dating somebody who's second time around that's been in a marriage, been in a long-term relationship and has that life experience. I think for two new daters, it's intense. I did recently, because I sometimes check up on movies, and there was a movie about something like the longest third date ever, and they were joking about going on a date and going to Costa Rica, and then it was just before COVID, like, let's go, and then they decide to actually go, and it's like, oh, we can't get back. Okay, so it's 4 days and 12 days, and all of a sudden it's like 90 days that they can't get back to the country, and they had the longest third date ever. So it was going from 0 to 100 very quickly, similar to what you're describing. In general, it's very hard to do that, but I think in this circumstance, obviously, it was something that clearly worked and was right. So now you're going out every day, and how long are you going out every day for before you have that moment of like, oh, we're going to probably... like, this is it.
Yeah, pretty good. A couple of weeks.
And did you get engaged right away?
No. We started talking about things. Then we started having bigger conversations, like how timeline, meeting the kids, meeting the families, what would life look like, where do we live, and this was on our pretty soon.
It seems to me that there's a conflict, right? There's a paradox because until you start talking about something more serious, then you're on edge with each other because you don't quite know what the other person's thinking and where this might be going, and you're double thinking and it's uncomfortable, and so therefore you have that feeling of being uncomfortable, which makes you feel maybe she's not the right person. Once you have the conversation, so you can feel more comfortable because now you're both on the same page, but it's a risk to have that. So it's an iterative process. I don't think you could just ask somebody to marry you. You have to sort of insinuate and you have to edge towards it, and each time you edge a little bit further you get a bit more comfortable, a bit more relaxed, and that gives you a bit more confidence it's the right person. And strangely, once you actually ask them, and then even maybe a week or two after, that's when you feel 100% certain. But because things change in the relationship as you become more confident with each other, and even as I say, even after you ask, and it takes time before you really believe it.
Yeah. It's a total mindset shift, and also coming off of years of being single and looking, and then finding someone and you're like, I think I'm not looking anymore. Like, what does my life look like when I stop looking? What do I do with all my free time? And for you to shift from have a family, had a family, have a family, will have a family, this past, present, future of, well, what does family mean? What does that look like? How does that work? And to shift into that with, like you said, you have the life, before, the life you're living now, and then the future life that you are hoping to live. I think it does take time for the brain to get used to that and for your environment. And I'm sure also for the kids, I'm sure that there was an adjustment period with that as well. And I like to not deal with children until the couple is 100% certain. If they're certain, great, we can deal with children. But if they're not certain, then it just gets more complicated.
Alisa was the first girl that I introduced to the kids.
First and the last.
Yeah,
Aren't you the lucky one? So how long did you end up dating before you actually got engaged?
3 months and a week or something.
And is there a wedding on the calendar yet?
Yes.
Are you open to sharing? Ish?
End of August.
Okay, great. Soon.
Thank God.
Really, really soon.
Yeah.
Fabulous. So you spend the holidays together. That's incredible. Yeah. What is, for anybody who's looking at it, for anybody who's in a difficult situation, what is, whether it's one piece of hope or one takeaway or one heartfelt piece of wisdom that you would want to share?
I'm always inspired by Talmud. Rabbi Eliezer says in the Talmud, when they're discussing Eve, who's described as a helper against him, as a connector, and that seems to be like a contradiction to describe a woman, a wife, as someone who's a helper, but also against the man. He explains that the idle wife gives you positive, sort of critical feedback, which I always thought was a very interesting paradigm, because I think a lot of the time we're looking for someone who's very similar, who's going to say yes, agrees with us. And yet my experience being married to Lucy for 25 years and also meeting Alisa and seeing how we interact is that actually I'm very happy to disagree. I think there are many things that we can disagree on. But if you respect the person and you admire how they are, who they are, and you admire their opinions, then you can actually learn from their opinions. So it may be that, she doesn't agree with me, but it could be because I'm wrong. And I'd love to be proven that I'm wrong from somebody that I respect and, has life experience herself who can, educate me. So I think for me, that is the basis of a good marriage, is where you can have an honest, open disagreement with somebody and you can talk through it and you can respect them, listen to them, and do that with the intention that, one of you will change if you can agree.
Beautiful. And for you?
I would say I'll just build on that a little bit. I think for so many years, the Shadchanim always said to us, the goal is just to get a second date. And after now, thank God, finding my person, I would say that's not the goal. The goal is to try to connect as authentically as you possibly can. Bring yourself, your whole self to the table. Okay, it doesn't have to be your whole self the whole time, but be authentic and try to connect to the person and have an authentic conversation, because only then will you get to know if there's something bigger there. I think when we come and we're meek, or we don't say what we need, or we don't push back and we just let them talk, then what's the point? Then it is just a cup of coffee. And I think what I've learned in this is that, and this has also been a big adjustment for me, because I'm coming off of many years of rejection, and my friends had to tell me, just because he says something to you, or he pushes back, or he says what's important to him, it doesn't mean that he's rejecting you. He's just putting it on the table, and you get to respond now. And I think, as to the single world, I would say that if you can let go of some of the noise and some of the rejection and some of the people in your ear who are telling you what to do and what not to do and what to say and what not to say, and just come open. Come open, come ready, try, and say your piece, maybe things will be a little bit easier.
I love what you said about being authentic, which I think is very important, and building a connection. And I think that second half is what people often miss. Like, they come and they're authentic. I am who I am. This is who I am, and accept me for who I am. And that's not
the same thing.
Not the same thing. What you described was, let me just be me. Let me share with you who I am. Hey, I don't know. I don't think you're looking for me, but maybe you are. I don't know. Here's who I am. And let me try to connect, whether I think, I don't think, whether I have rejection in my head, but let me try to connect from the place of who I am. And I think that that's something that's really missing. And I do give it that advice, just the goal is to get to a second date, keep going, right? Because if you had dumped him after a first date and said, listen, you don't want me, let me save you some time, right? If you had been so authentic and, let's say, true to yourself without the connection piece, you might have said, you don't want me. You said what you want, and I'm not anything like that, so why don't we just call it quits now? Some people are authentic in the name of being true to who they are, but without building the bridge. But if he's asking you out, then clearly he's interested, even if it doesn't make sense, where you think maybe not, and maybe some things are different. So I think that's both gorgeous advice. Your story is truly, truly humbling and inspiring on both ends. I could probably go on. We could probably have 3 episodes. So we'll talk about having you back, because I feel like there's so many things that we didn't unpack here. But I want to thank you for being public about this. I want to thank you for sharing, especially for you who's not so comfortable on social media and doing these things. I want to thank you for being on social media, for sharing, because this is my goal, is to inspire the world and to let everybody know that my friend says HOPE is an acronym for Hang On, Possibilities Exist. And I feel like it is so true. Possibilities exist.
So my teacher, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, used to say there's a difference between optimism and hope. Optimism is believing that things will get better, and hope is doing something to make them better. And I think that when it comes to dating, you need hope. And that means you need to get out there, and it's a numbers game. That was my impression. I probably wouldn't have chosen Alisa perhaps if I'd met her the first time, but having sampled the market and realized that Alisa is really unique and special. I was at the point at which I understood that this was something I couldn't afford to turn down. I think, but that makes every rejection and every wasted evening, was actually a step towards finding Alisa. And that's, in a sense, I felt that. I felt that I was learning about myself every time I met someone who was not appropriate. I learned a bit more about what I'm looking for, because you have an initial spec, you have 3 or 4 things on it. Then you meet someone. The first girl that I went out through the shidduch process, she was, she was attractive and she was interesting. She ticked a few other boxes. And I thought to myself, okay, so we'll go another time. And went out about 5 times. But I had this gut feeling that something wasn't right. And then I discovered that, she always walked every week with the same friend. She always spent Shabbat with her parents. And basically what I pieced together was she had no social life outside of, whatever. And I thought that's something which I never even thought of, but it's something which is important to me, that this person has a social life, that she's got friends and that she's sociable and she's going to connect with my friends, and she's not going to be too needy to me the whole time. And other things I discovered about myself and my needs, which I would never have even thought about had I not met these also amazing people, but who were not what I was looking for.
So I talk about that actually in my book, and I talk about rejection is God's protection, and it's also redirection. So it's God's protection and it's redirection, right? This isn't for you. Good. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. And it's redirection. Maybe we'll try this. Maybe we'll try this. See, that didn't work, right? Now my mind is open, and now I might be open to a match that I wouldn't have previously said yes to. And I often speak about it has to be the right person, and it needs to be the right time. And that is really everything. I've heard people meet somebody and years later they end up getting together. You're like, why couldn't you figure that out 10 years ago? Because the timing wasn't right, because it didn't work for whatever reason. And especially with your story, you see how everybody has to go through life to get to where they are. And I'm just going to leave us on one note about soulmates. A lot of people have a lot of concepts about what soulmates are and how many you get in a lifetime. And I have a little bit of a running joke, and I say, well, how many times would you like to be married? As many. How do you make a soulmate? You get married. Boom. You make a soulmate by getting married. Now you have a soulmate. If Hashem takes your soulmate from you, or if you divorce them, you have the opportunity to get married again. Well, some people are married once, and some people are married twice. But every time you get married, you have a soulmate. You make your soulmate in that moment, and they can't exist before that. And it's, like right now, you guys are actually potential soulmates. Once you get married, you will be official soulmates according to the rules of Aliza ben Shalom.
Can I just say one more thing to the single
yes.
people? A lot of my friends keep saying, well, you're so lucky, and it's so romantic, and your story, and it's so easy, da-da-da. And one of the things that he and I talked about early on, he said to me, wow, you must have a great spec. You must know exactly what you're looking for. You've been doing this for so long. You know exactly. And I said to him at the time, yes, no. Yeah, and the no's are super easy. One and done. Easy. Yes. Maybe. The maybes is where the work comes in, and what he has helped me and taught me to do is to be able to put in the work in the most beautiful way possible, to build something greater than ourselves. And I think that my friends look at me and they say, wow, this was so fast and so easy. Nothing in life is easy, and just because something is fast, it doesn't mean that it's easy.
25 years worth of easy, so to speak. You've been on the journey.
Exactly. But even this has been intense and amazing, but everything is work, and the good things are the harder work. And that's like, if I can give a message that work doesn't mean bad.
Thank you. Work doesn't mean bad. It just means work. I'm going to give you guys a blessing that you should build a Bayis Ne'eman B'Yisrael. You should be blessed with good health, with a beautiful family together, and that you should continue to inspire the world and all of the people that you meet.
Amen. Thank you.
And you too.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for joining us on Matchmaker. You can tell us what you want to hear about. If you want to hear heartfelt stories, if you want to hear inspirational stories, if you know somebody that we should interview, let us know. You can message us. All of our info is in the comments. Can people reach out to you? We'll put his info in the comments. If you want to reach out, you will be able to find him. And thank you. Thank you for being with us.